A lonely hitman is supposed to kill a beautiful thief, but ends up falling in love with her instead, leading him to having to protect her from the other hitmen who want her dead. Welcome back to Nonstop Recap. Today we'll be recapping the 2010 action comedy Wild Target. The movie begins with an assassin named Victor Maynard as he casually strolls into a building. Moments later, a man is thrown out of the window of that building, after which Victor strolls out like he didn't just kill a man. He gets a call to find out where his money is before going to pick it up and complaining about people who pay half now and half later. Back at home, Victor spends his time taping his money back together while also learning French. The next day, Victor heads to his next kill and kills the man as he examines a diamond. The man's parrot hears Victor say his name, so Victor steals the bird. We then see Victor as he visits his mother, and she questions if he's gay because he's 54 and doesn't have a wife, but Victor tells her that he's straight. His mother then surprises him with an early birthday present of all his past hits and says she's proud of his career. But he needs to have a son so he can carry on their family tradition of becoming an assassin. As he leaves, Victor leaves the bird with his mother, and she doesn't seem happy about it. Back home, Victor cooks himself dinner before speaking French and pretending to eat with someone. The film then cuts to Rose, a selfish woman, as she recklessly cycles through the street. She then lights some firecrackers to distract some guards and sneaks into an art museum. She heads to the restoration department where she meets up with Jerry, a painter who is making a copy of a famous Rembrandt painting for her so she can scam a buyer. Jerry is nervous about their plan, but Rose uses her good looks to seduce and convince him to go through with it. He shows her the fake Rembrandt painting and warns her that the paint is still a little wet. We then see Rose as she practices selling the painting and swiping it out with the fake. Her plan is to demand more money than as agreed upon and put the real painting in her case, only to then turn her suitcase over pretending she was just kidding about the extra money and pull out the fake painting. She then puts on a wig and meets with Ferguson, the buyer. The painting is authenticated and Rose tries to ask for more money, and to her surprise, Ferguson agrees to pay more. Not sure what to do, Rose asks for $1 million and puts the painting back in her case. Ferguson's guards point their guns at Rose, and she says she was just joking before pulling the painting out of her case. She walks off with the money as Ferguson examines his new painting. He touches it, and everyone notices that the paint is still wet, and they all realize that the painting is a fake. Victor gets a call, presumably from Ferguson, and he's tasked with killing Rose. Meanwhile, Rose goes to visit Jerry and gives him his cut of the $1 million. We then see a montage of Victor following Rose and trying to kill her, but he's never able to get a good moment. He eventually follows her to a hotel where he plans to shoot her through the window, but she ends up sleeping with one of the hotel workers. He falls asleep while waiting for them to finish and wakes up as she leaves. He goes to take a shot, but ends up deciding not to. Victor meets with his mother later that day and gets chewed out for damaging his reputation and not finishing the job. She tells him he needs to call Ferguson and tell him that he'll finish the job today and for free. Victor follows Rose again, and this time to a parking garage, and he prepares to kill her when one of Ferguson's bodyguards shows up and tries to shoot her. Nearby, a young man named Tony is casually smoking while taking a break from washing cars. Victor kills the other hitman and tells Rose to get in her car while questioning what he's doing. Suddenly, another bodyguard named Mike pops up in the back seat and makes them both get out and face the wall as he prepares to get them. Tony shows up to save the day and shoots Mike, causing Rose to faint. Tony is freaking out because he's never fired a gun before, but Victor is able to convince him to hand over the gun before using it to knock out Mike. Rose comes to as Tony and Victor drag Mike into the stairwell. Victor gets ready to kill Mike, but Tony stops him and says they should just run instead. Tony leaves and Victor ends up going back to Rose when she tells him she's scared. She begs him to be her personal protector, but Victor is reluctant. Rose hugs him and he finally agrees and pays him some money for a down payment. The two get in the car to leave, and Victor lies to Rose, telling her that he's actually a private detective. Suddenly, Mike appears behind the car and begins shooting at them. Victor tells Rose to book it, and she ends up hitting Tony. Victor pulls him into the back seat of the car, and the group drive away. Victor brings them to a hotel where he tells them they'll be safe since no one will suspect that they're there. They get a cheap room with only one bed, and Victor chews Rose out for picking an odd room that will get them noticed. It's also revealed that Ferguson is staying in a room right down the hall from them. Later that night, Rose and Victor go to the hotel's bar and start to bond, when Victor apologizes for being unpleasant. The two get into another squabble soon after because she was staring at the bartender instead of listening to Victor. She storms off and goes to flirt with the bartender before ordering several drinks and getting very drunk. She stumbles back to the room with Victor and mistakenly knocks on Ferguson's door, thinking it was their room. Victor gets Rose inside their room and apologizes to Ferguson for the misunderstanding. Rose then sees a pair of gross boots she stole from Mike and puts them outside the door to be cleaned. The next morning, Rose and Victor head out for breakfast while Tony takes a bath. Meanwhile, Ferguson meets with another hitman named Dixon and explains what's going on. Mike describes Victor's appearance, and Dixon instantly recognizes him because Victor is considered the best hitman out there. Mike leaves Ferguson's room and sees his missing boots in the hallway. He goes into the room and tries to drown Tony in the bath. Tony manages to escape and grab Mike's gun, which he accidentally fires and shoots off Mike's ear. Tony finds Victor and Rose and tells them what's going on as Mike tells Ferguson that Rose and Victor are in the building. The three run out of the hotel and get in their car only to end up in a high-speed chase with Mike and Ferguson. Rose isn't driving fast enough, so Victor swaps spots with her mid-chase and takes over driving. The three manage to get away, and Ferguson and Mike end up in a horrible wreck. Afterward, Victor tells Rose and Tony that he's going to take them to a safe house. They go to a gas station, and Rose runs inside to pee. Tony and Victor talk, and Victor offers to take Tony on as an apprentice because he's a pretty good shot. And Tony agrees and thinks he's training to be a private detective. Rose comes running out of the gas station with stolen goods, while the clerk yells at her, so the group has to flee. In the car, Victor yells at Rose for her reckless behavior. Victor brings Rose and Tony to his house and gets them settled in while Rose makes fun of his decor. That night, Victor hears loud noises coming from Rose's room at 2 a.m. and finds out that she has insomnia and is trying to make her bed face south. Instead, he just throws her pillows toward the foot of the bed so she's facing south. He storms off to Tony's room to show her how Tony is well behaved and asleep, only to find Tony listening to music. The next morning, Victor finds Rose digging a hole in his garden and is furious, even though she says she just wanted to plant some flowers as a thank you. The two fight, and Rose says that Victor doesn't live like a normal human, and she insinuates that she thinks he might be gay. Victor goes to talk to Tony while he's taking a bath because he thinks he might be sexually confused by Tony, but he's able to figure out that isn't it. The film then cuts to Dixon and his henchman Fabian as they meet with the painting authenticator Ferguson hired. They question him on who could have made the fake painting, and he gives them a list of names before being shot by Dixon. That night, Rose goes to Victor to apologize for what she said earlier. She says she can't sleep again, and Victor offers her a foot massage since he doesn't have any meds for her to take. As Victor gives her a massage, Rose admits she likes being protected by Victor and ends up falling in love with him. Rose wakes up in the middle of the night and sees an old woman wielding a knife and has to roll out of bed to avoid being stabbed. She screams for help, and Tony comes to assist but ends up closing the door with Rose still stuck inside the room. Eventually, they both get out and tell Victor they were attacked by an old lady. He realizes it's his mother and tries to calm her down as she shoots a hole through the door with a shotgun. Rose goes to sleep in Tony's room while Victor talks to his mother, and she confesses to Tony that she's in love with Victor. The next morning, Victor has his mom sent away, and Rose gazes at him lovingly through a window. Meanwhile, Fabian and Dixon visit another painter and show him the fake Rembrandt. They ask him who painted it, and he tells them it was Jerry and tells them where they can find him. Just Just like last time, Dixon shoots the man as soon as he tells them what they want to know. That night, Victor is walking through his house when the lights go out. He begins to panic, but it turns out just to be Tony and Rose surprising him with a cake for his birthday. The three celebrate Victor's birthday and end up getting incredibly drunk. Victor wakes up the next morning while Tony and Rose are still asleep, so he picks Rose up and carries her to bed. She wakes up and flirts with him, and the two end up sleeping together. Later that day, Victor begins to redecorate his living room because he wants Rose to like it. As he does this, Rose sneaks into his room to go through his belongings. He comes into the room, forcing her to hide, and she watches as he opens a secret compartment in his wardrobe. After he leaves, Rose investigates the compartment and finds evidence of Victor being a hitman that was hired to kill her. Rose packs her things and is about to escape out the window when Victor and Tony come to fetch her so they can show her a surprise downstairs. She thinks that Victor and Tony are going to kill her as she follows them downstairs, so she hits them with her purse and confronts Victor about being a hitman. She then threatens him with an old gun she found in Victor's secret compartment, and he warns her not to shoot it because it could blow up in her face. Rose ends up storming out of the house with her bag and driving off. Victor warns Tony not to leave the house because Dixon will probably hunt and kill him. Tony asks Victor to train him, and Victor begins having Tony assemble a gun blindfolded, but he isn't very good at it. In the meantime, Rose goes to visit Jerry only to find him dead. Dixon and Fabian reveal themselves and threaten Rose until she gives them Victor's address. Back at the house, Victor is trying to improve Tony's aim when Fabian and Dixon show up with Rose. They force Tony and Victor to drop their guns, and Victor pretends not to know who Dixon is to humiliate and irritate him. Realizing that Victor and Rose are in love, Dixon tells Victor that if he shoots Rose, then he'll set Tony free. Victor aims at Rose as she tells him to do it when Victor's mother appears on the balcony and guns down Fabian. Victor and his mother are bickering when Fabian tries to throw a knife at them, but Tony is able to catch it. Dixon then grabs the old gun Rose stole out of her bag and holds it to Tony's head, warning everyone to drop their guns. Victor mentions that the gun was his dad's old gun, and Victor fires it, only for it to explode and kill Dixon due to how old and dirty it was. The film then cuts forward 3 years, and we see that Rose and Victor have a son, and Tony seems to have become an assassin like Victor. Click on one of the videos on screen for more.